Sounds perfect.
Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. Have you heard of the term ageism or the negative effects of the aging process? Well, today, my friends, we're going to debunk a lot of those negative stigmas around age. I believe that age is just a number, or is it? We're going to find more about that in just a moment. But my guest today is none other than Dr. Becca Levy. Now, for those of you that don't know, Becca Levy. For those of you that don't know who she is, she's an award-winning Yale Professor of Psychology and Global Health. She received a PhD in psychology from Harvard University. My goodness, she's a smart cookie. And held a National Institute of Aging postdoctoral fellowship at the Division of Aging and Department School of Medicine at Harvard Medical School. Just if it doesn't get any better than that. She has given invited testimony before the United States Senate on the effects of ageism, contributed to benefits submitted by the United States Supreme Court in age discrimination cases, and participated in the United Nations discussions of ageism too. She has a brand new book coming out called Breaking the Age Code. It isn't just a how to age well guide. It's an age liberation manifesto, which I like. Right when we all need it. And don't we all? Dr. Becca Levy, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. That was great. Thanks.
You're more than welcome for it. And apologies for calling you Becky. I don't know where just my brain flipped for a second there. I think
that's
I wanted to call you Becky.
That. Yeah, that's totally fine too.
But I really do appreciate you making the time to be here today. And age is something that I am very interested in because we all age at different points of our life. It is a process and we all have to get used to it to some degree. And at some point, I guess we don't always stay young forever. Sadly, I wish that was the possibility. I know I'm being a little bit negative right off the bat. I know I shouldn't be, but the very first question that I do have for you before we dive into age and unboxing more about that is, what does success look like for you?
In terms of successful, just general success or successful aging, or?
Just general success. Like, what does it look like for you in terms of career, your life, all those things?
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, I think it's success. I think it sort of could be thought of as an interaction between the individual and the society. And I think of success as involving, finding a sense of purpose and finding a way to be generative and make the world a better place, I think are all big parts of success.
When was the moment for you, Becca, that you realized that in fact was success for you? Has it been this gradual course over your life that you realized at different moments, or was there sort of more of a catalyst moment for you?
Yes, I think it's been learning over time and having the opportunity to observe different aspects of life and conduct research. I feel very lucky to have also, in writing the book, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of amazing people who I think have taught me a lot about success, who've had very different types of success, but have been very instructive to me about what success can look like in very different forms, from poetry writing to one of my favorite people that I spoke to for the book is somebody who is a mushroom hunter. Wow. So I think there's a lot of great examples of successful aging as well.
So why did you decide to study the process of aging in the first place?
I became really interested in the topic actually right after I got out of graduate school, or actually before graduate school, when I was getting out of my undergraduate, and I had studied psychology, and I really wanted to find a job that would allow me to do something with psychology. And what I found was this job in a psychiatric hospital, and the only job available was in a geriatric unit, so with older patients. And I at first thought, I really don't want to take that job. That's just going to be so depressing. And I had all these stereotypes about what the older patients would be like. But I thought, well, maybe I'll just try it. I don't have another job. And so I thought I would try it for 2 weeks. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I loved it so much. Like, I learned so much about how aging health can be thought of as due to cultural factors and biological factors. And I also learned that there's a lot of treatments and a lot of growth that happens with the older patients. And so by the end, I was really convinced that this was a fascinating topic that I wanted to become more involved in.
It definitely is a fascinating topic, but what has psychology, or the study of psychology in humans, got to do with the process of aging?
Well, I think what I have learned is that there's a lot of roles of psychological factors. So we know when you look at longevity, only about 25% is due to genetic factors. So the other 75% is due to many factors that we can control. So many of those are psychological factors. And in particular, what I found in my research is that these age beliefs can be really important. How a culture thinks about older people can have a dramatic impact on their health and longevity.
Why are beliefs so important in the first place?
Well, I think they are very important because, they determine how we navigate in the world and all the expectations we have. And they also help us in minimizing all the incredible amount of information that we encounter every day. So beliefs can be very adaptive and very helpful. But unfortunately, they also include these negative stereotypes that exist in our culture, and those can be harmful to us as well.
How does those, negative beliefs affect how we age? Does it decrease how we age?
So we have found that it can have dramatic impacts on a number of different health outcomes. So everything from memory to balance to longevity. So it can actually have these age beliefs that we take in starting at a really young age, starting as young as 3 or 4. Most of us have already taken in the age beliefs of our culture. And I found that over time, those beliefs can actually impact all these different ways of how we function in the world as we get older.
That's interesting. So, okay, let's go further a little bit more. Why do we age in the first place? Let's cut that off the list.
Why do we age? I think just by being alive every day that passes, we are aging. So, every living organism ages, and that's part of nature.
So we can't stop the process of aging at all?
I think it's just, part of our natural development. I think it is part of the life cycle that we progress through these different stages. So I don't think we have any way at the moment to stop aging. Maybe we'll develop one. But at the moment, no, I think it's just a natural process that all living organisms go through.
And where do we get these negative cultural beliefs around, or these negative stereotypes surrounding getting older?
So I think there's a number of sources of the negative age beliefs. And so in Breaking the Age Code, I actually break down the different sources. And what's important about identifying those sources is we can overcome them when we identify where they are. But there are a number of sources, including advertisement, media, marketing. And I conducted one study looking at social media. So my daughters actually pointed out to me that they were seeing all these negative messages on their social media feeds and about aging. And so I actually conducted a study to see whether that was representative of the kind of messages that are out there. So I studied all publicly accessible Facebook groups that had something to do with aging. And what we found was most of them are pretty negative, and 40% of them actually advocated limiting or banning older people from public activities like swimming and shopping. So there's a lot of disturbing messages. So even though social media could be a great way to connect the generations, unfortunately, through Facebook and other sources, it's become a source of expanding the ageism.
Is this just for older people, or is it more for young people as well?
Who are actually, I think all ages are creating it and seeing it. So I think all people are being exposed to it. And what we know is that for younger people, if they take in the negative age beliefs, when they become older, those beliefs can actually have an impact on their health. So it can have these long-term effects. We don't usually see anything in younger people when they're still young, but as they get older, those can kick in, and we've seen it can impact such things as cardiovascular health. But the good news is we can also reverse that process. So it's not inevitable. It's definitely, there are ways to resist negative age beliefs and take on some of the positive age beliefs.
I want to get to how we can reverse it in just a moment, but the idea of our culture kind of limiting young people, like you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z until you're this particular age. That is one particular one that I grew up with. And, I couldn't wait to get older so that I could experience it. How is that like damaging our youth? Is it damaging our youth?
Well, I think there are age stereotypes that, as you say, that can impact younger people. And so we know that particularly like in the workplace, I think there's been studies of younger people experiencing that they're maybe not judged as being as competent that they would like to be. And so I think that can limit some of their opportunities. But I think it's actually so. But for the health effects that I found in my research, those happen in later life. So when the age beliefs that are specific to older people tend to be more about aging health. So those in turn seem to be the ones that are particularly damaging for health and longevity.
So the majority of cases that you've looked at, it mainly affects cardiovascular health, or does it affect other areas like the brain or the telomeres or these aging processes that cause us to age pretty much?
Yes. So in our research, I found that these age beliefs can impact longevity. I have a study that found that they can impact brain biomarkers of dementia. Also, we have found that these age beliefs can impact stress biomarkers, so cortisol levels. So it actually, they can have quite a dramatic, wide range of impacts.
This is fascinating stuff. And what is actually ageism? Is that just a term that people use to talk about the negative effects of aging?
Yes, so that's a great question. So ageism is defined as age discrimination, it's parallel to racism or sexism, but the prejudice that is expressed because of somebody's age. So, and it's interesting because even though it's so prevalent, it's also probably one of the least recognized forms of prejudice. I think there's unfortunately not as much recognition that there could be of the harms of ageism.
So can you share like what happens with this kind of discrimination? Like what do people do usually so we can look out for it?
Right. Well, actually, I could tell you a story about something happened with me and my grandmother. And this is actually one of the reasons that I became interested in this topic. So I was actually with my grandmother, this active 75-year-old. We were in a shop together and she tripped over this crate that had been left in one of the aisles. It had very sharp edges and it actually cut her leg as she fell over it. It was really just this awful event. And so I helped her up and we were walking out of the store together and we saw the store manager. So we complained about this box that had been left there that she fell over. And instead of apologizing, he rudely said to her something like, well, why would an older person be walking around anyway? They fall all the time. And his words were just so damaging to her. And she afterwards, I think she felt diminished as an older person. She didn't want to go on her usual walks. And it really I observed that it seemed to have this real immediate impact on her. And so that actually inspired me to try to understand how the process can work. And what we found in a number of different studies that followed is that these age stereotypes, age messages that we encounter in a lot of different ways can really have harmful effects on our psychology and how we think about ourselves and our behavior, whether or not we take prescribed medications or exercise every day, and also our physiology. So as we were talking about these biomarkers of stress and brain biomarkers, so they can really have dramatic impacts.
I'm sorry to hear that happened to your mum. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing to actually experience or go through because the negative mental health aspects can be crazy. I mean, I've had people, just to kind of relate in terms of the ageism factor. I mean, I don't really mind for myself because I'm still quite young, but it still has a negative connotation to it because I'm 25 at the moment. And I wanted to write my first book. So I had a lot of people say to me, you're 25 years old. Have you lived enough life yet? So they associated age to the amount of experience that I had apparently not lived yet. And I'm just like, well, that's not true because you can live a lot of experiences in a short period of time. Like you can live a whole lifetime of experiences in a short period of time. You don't have to be 75 years old and, live all these experiences. You can be quite young too. So I experienced that sort of effect. And I'm just like, well, why is that? Why do people just have that idea towards age? It's fascinating to me.
True. Yes. And you were able to prove them wrong, the people who had those.
I hope so.
Misperceptions, all your great work.
I tried to turn that negative into a positive and say, look, like how many young people do you know that have been through the amount of things that I have been through and still standing and still trying to make a positive difference into the world? So they were being negative on their own basis. And I just like, no, I'm not going to allow that to stand. It's exhausting. I didn't want it to actually happen, but I'd much rather explain it like that so that at least they get it. And I hope they get it.
Right.
Yeah, that sort of thing happens. So hopefully it sticks.
Yeah, I think so. And we found that too. I found that in my research that one of the important ways to overcome these negative age messages is to confront them and to actually, and in Breaking the Age Code, I present some of the most common stereotypes and the reasons that they're wrong about aging, and give people some of the information that they can throw out if somebody presents one of these negative age stereotypes. And I think it's always, for me, I don't always have a response ready when somebody says something that they present a negative age stereotype. But something I think is important is that you don't actually have to respond right away. So sometimes somebody will say something, you think about it, you think that doesn't make any sense. And you can go back to them later and say, hey, not only is that not nice, but it's not correct, because we have all this research that shows that older people are actually great at doing, X and Y. So yes, that's great that you're doing that already.
It's like, hey, remember this? You said this to me. Well, now I've got a response.
Exactly.
Give me a little bit of time to think about it. I'm very much the same way. I'm not good with confrontation one bit. Just like, let me go away and think about it, come up with a logical response, and then I'll go in and give you my explanation. And hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully you get it.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, I completely understand that. But so these negative things that you talk about in the book, these negative effects or stereotypes, I guess, are they mainly for older people or younger people too? Is there like a broad range?
Yes. So I think there are a broad range of stereotypes. So I think you're right. I think there are beliefs about every stage of the life cycle. And some of them are negative and some of them are positive. So unfortunately, in the United States, a lot of the messages about older age are negative. But the good news is that most people also have those positive age beliefs somewhere in their mind. And so in my research, we've looked at ways to strengthen those positive age beliefs that people already have in their minds and give them the tools to draw on those and have those available.
Is age just a number?
It's a number, but it also has a lot of cultural associations. And so that's something that I'm really interested in. And it also varies very much by culture. So we found, dramatically different cultural beliefs about aging, looking in different cultures and different countries, but also within countries, there's often different groups that showed different types of age beliefs.
Yeah. So you look at sort of, for example, I know in Asian cultures, they have a lot of respect for the older generation, which I think should be the case across the entire sphere of the world. But It seems like in the West, we put them in a nursing home, it's kind of like you've forgotten, which is sad. It's horrible to hear about that. But yeah, how can we change this in terms of our culture, the Western culture, and the way we treat elderly people?
Yeah, so actually that's interesting that you mentioned the difference between Asian cultures and Western cultures, because the way that I actually got started in this research is I had a trip to Japan and I went there trying to see why they had the longest lifespan in the world. And the first thing that I noticed was how different the cultural beliefs about aging are. So I noticed that the beliefs towards the Japanese older people are much more positive than what I was used to in Boston, where I was living at the time. And, so like in Japan, I noticed that centenarians and super centenarians. Those who live to 110 were treated like rock stars on television. And they have this National Older People Day where they celebrate the older people. And so what I observed was that these age beliefs are much more positive and they have a longer lifespan. And then subsequently in research, I actually found that that is the case, that these positive age beliefs can lead to, we found a 7.5 year advantage in survival if people take in the more positive age beliefs in a younger age.
Wow. That is incredible. This is fascinating research. How does, you mentioned earlier that I think it was 75% make up of the beliefs and the other percentage is DNA and the genome code and all that sort of stuff. But how can we change our DNA so that we can live longer by using positive reinforcement?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I actually conducted a study that looked at whether a risky gene for dementia that some people are born with, whether those people who have the more have this risky gene, whether they could overcome it if they develop more positive age beliefs. And what we found was that was the case. So we found that those who had the risky gene but developed positive age beliefs had a 40% lower risk of developing dementia. And in fact, their risk was as low as somebody who doesn't have the risky gene at all. So they were actually able to overcome it. And I actually, in writing the book, Breaking the Age Code, I had the opportunity to talk to some people who actually were born with a high level of a biomarker for dementia and had these positive age beliefs. So for example, I spoke to this great pediatrician named Jonas, who is 78, and he even though he had this biomarker, he had this really positive age belief. And he actually was this nationally known diagnostician. So he was actually able to identify these rare illnesses in babies and young children. And he drew on these positive age beliefs that he had to become this wonderful diagnostician. So yeah, so I think we really can, use these age beliefs to overcome and compensate different kinds of genetic or genes that we're born with.
Let me get to your new book in just a moment. But firstly, why should we all care about the effects that ageism has? And a lead-on question, how did the Senate react to you when you confronted them?
Yes. So that was great. So when I had a chance to talk to the Senate, I was actually accompanied by this wonderful actress who spoke about her experiences of ageism in Hollywood. So that was really fun. And I also, there was some people from marketing and media who were there too. And so I then I talked about the research findings that I had. And I think with all of us together, I think we were really able to make the case that ageism is a real problem and has really become a public health problem that we can overcome and confront with legislation.
Are you getting a lot of positive feedback from society about this, or is it just a lot of blowback?
Yes. I think there is a growing movement of people that are really upset about ageism, want to overcome it, and also want to strengthen the human rights of older people. And so I think there's a lot of signs that this movement is beginning. And I actually had this wonderful opportunity to participate in the first rally to overcome ageism. So the first rally against ageism that took place in Central Park a few years ago. So they're just, all people of a lot of different ages, young people, teenagers, children, older people of all different decades. And it was really exciting to come together and to talk about ageism that exists now, how we're going to overcome it, and how we're going to celebrate aging.
Is that the age liberation movement?
Yes. So there's the start of the age liberation movement that I'm really excited about. And in the book, I had fun writing up a blueprint of what we can do to encourage the age liberation movement to grow and reach a turning point or a tipping point where we can actually tip society into positive age-friendly initiatives and embracing aging.
What would you say to someone that comes along and says, look, Dr. Becca, we've got enough things in society to worry about. I mean, we've got enough isms, so to speak, that are on the table that we need to focus on more of. This isn't really scientific. What would you say to them?
Well, I think what's exciting is that we have a lot of science now. So that's part of the reason that I wanted to write this book, is I feel like we're at a critical point of all these findings that are coming up that we have found it with lots of different methods, looking at different cultures and different types of experiments. And I've looked at studies that follow people over decades. So we have all this evidence and results that really show the scientific basis of how the negative age beliefs can lead to harm in our health. But also what's exciting is we know the reverse is true. So that's the good news. So the good news is that we can strengthen and develop these positive age beliefs, and those can have a benefit on health in a lot of different ways.
What's the craziest or the most interesting story that you discovered upon your research with regards to aging?
The craziest. Well, one of the things actually, so I interviewed this guy who I really enjoyed talking to, this man named John, who is a actor who took on, and he's 78, and he took on the task of memorizing a 60,000 word poem. So he decided that he wanted to memorize it and then perform it over days for his community. And he was very successful, has been very successful in doing that. And what was really exciting about this is, for him, one of the things that inspired him was his own positive age beliefs. So he talked about how, as he was getting ready and memorizing all of these words, that he thought about this cellist who played beautiful music in his 80s and 90s. And so he had this image of positive age beliefs, and that in turn helped him do this incredible memory feat. And that in turn sort of generated another positive age belief of people in the community could look up to him of something that he had done that was quite remarkable.
Wow. So I want to tie off a little part that we sort of touched on a moment ago in dementia. And is dementia sort of just a part of a process of aging? Because not many people actually get it. I mean, it's increasing today, or is there something more to it than that?
Yes. So dementia levels are not, so not every, that is actually a stereotype of aging, that everyone gets dementia. We know that's just not true. A lot of older people never develop dementia. And there's also the stereotype that all types of memory decline in all older people. And we also know that the science doesn't match that. There are many different types of memory, and some of them actually stay the same, like procedural memory, or like the ability to ride a bike, and some actually improve. So we know that types of memory, like for vocabulary, for example, can improve in later life. And we also know, as the story I just told you about John, that there are these older people who have fantastic memories. So so I think there's a lot of science that we know overturns some of those stereotypes.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, my dad's auntie, she has dementia. It's sad to watch the deterioration. But yeah, it doesn't mean, like, when you're young, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it either. And if you can prevent yourself from getting it, then definitely go for it. Be as positive as you want. If that's going to help it, 100%, like, I'm down for it. So what sort of things do we need to tell ourselves on a regular basis so that we can maintain this positive age belief?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think part of it, is to develop a portfolio of positive images. So in Breaking the Age Code, I present about 15 evidence-based tools of what people can do to strengthen the positive age beliefs and resist the negative age beliefs. And so, so one of the examples, or one of the tools that I talk about, is developing a portfolio of positive age beliefs that you can draw on. And those can come from lots of different sources, from books that you have a lot of books I can see in the background. So a lot of those books will have examples of positive aging. A lot of people have in their own families a lot of positive examples, also in history and in culture. And so there's just, I think, coming up with a range of positive images, and also those that have different strengths. So we find that that's really important because somebody could have a great, sense of humor, and that's something that you really admire, and somebody else could be a great storyteller. So I'm sure you've encountered a lot of, great older storytellers. So, finding a range of people with a range of things that you admire can be very inspiring.
What I find helps me is the story factor, because it makes me feel like I'm young every single time that I do read a story. It's like, this is timeless, if it's from an older person and their life going back in time almost, and reading the history of how they grew up. And I don't even feel like that they're old, or like, for example, I'm reading this lady's book. She's 94 at the moment, Dr. Edith Egger, and she survived the Holocaust. But as I'm reading it and she's going through the course of her life, I keep forgetting that she's 94 years old. It's just transported me back into time. And that in turn makes me feel like I am with her at that age. So she could be like a teenager, and I feel like I'm a teenager walking that journey with her. So that's another reason why I like it. And that's helped me quite a bit in terms of the story element. But all those other things that you were talking about, how many of them do you write about in your new book?
Yes. So, in terms of tools that people can take on, so we have probably about 15 evidence-based tools that I present. And then also in the book, there are many examples of different cultures and different stories about people who exemplify different examples of how these age beliefs in different cultures can have a real impact on our health and longevity.
So all of them combined equally as important, or is that really, really hard to have all 15 at one time?
Yeah. So what I suggest is to think about which ones fit best into your own life. So I think somebody's not going to do all 15. So even if you find 2 or 3 or even one that really appeals to you, that you feel like you can bring into your life, and then I suggest that you repeat it. So we know if you do something 3 times or so, that it becomes sort of a comfortable habit. And so if you find one of the 15 tools really speaks to you and your lifestyle, then that is one that I would suggest trying out.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, well, I think both what I was talking about before of developing a portfolio of positive images, and then also I think finding ways to increase awareness of our own age beliefs and also the portrayals of aging in everyday life. And so that's something that I found is particularly powerful, is finding ways to increase our awareness, since some of these age beliefs can operate without our awareness or implicitly. And so finding ways to bring those out to the forefront and make us aware when somebody's talking about aging in a way that is dismissive or is negative, to really take a step back and think, does that really match all the older people that I know? Like, do I know some people that older people that just does not fit? Do one of my positive images go against that? Or is there science that goes against it? And so that's something that I tried to bring in the book, is to present scientific findings that people can also draw on to become aware of how they operate, and then also overcome them and strengthen the positive age beliefs.
Do you believe that it is a waste of time to be every single day conscious of the fact that we are getting older?
And I actually think that there's enough. It's good to acknowledge that it's part of being a human, and there are many things that we can embrace about the process. So I think I think that being age blind, which is something that people sometimes talk about, doesn't really make sense, because it's part of who we are. It's part of our identity. And so I think a better way of dealing with it is to actually think about, what do I enjoy about the age that I'm in right now? And who are the people who are a little bit older than me who are having a good experience with it, and what are they doing? So I think making it explicit and actually engaging with it is a good solution.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that we should celebrate getting older, or just age in general.
Yes, exactly.
That's a beautiful thing of part of life. But why did you decide to write Breaking the Age Code?
I decided to write it in part because of, I think it's become ageism, I think has become a public health crisis. So we know from a recent study in the United States that about 80% of older Americans reported experiencing ageism. So, for example, there is this awful meme that became quite popular at the beginning of the pandemic of calling COVID boomer remover, which is just, which makes fun of the idea of older people dying. So there's these awful cases of ageism that are out there. But at the same time, we know that we can, from my research, we have these really critical findings. So I know now that these age beliefs can impact our health and longevity. But I also know that we can take on these tools to strengthen and improve the positive age belief, both, for an individual, but also on a societal level. So the age liberation movement that we were talking about before, I think is a real positive aspect of a current culture that's starting to develop.
The boomer remover, that I haven't heard before.
Okay.
I thought I heard everything under the sun regarding COVID, but that's a new one for me.
Yeah, wow. It's so terrible. But there are many messages like that out there, unfortunately, on social media that I think we can overcome.
Yeah, social media these days, it's becoming a toxic environment, especially regarding age demographics and people putting themselves out there to be a certain projection of age and it's just toxic environment. I try and stay away from it as much as possible. But what were some of the challenges that you encountered when you were writing Breaking the Age Code?
Well, I think for me, I'm an academic, so most of my writing and thinking and research has been writing for a scientific audience. So what was a really exciting challenge in writing Breaking the Age Code was to think about how to present these important findings with stories, with examples in everyday culture and from popular culture. And so I think for me, making that transition to reach a broader number of people who could benefit from our findings has been challenging, but also very rewarding. It's been great to talk to all these people it's given me an opportunity to call all these people up and meet with people that I might not have otherwise. And it's also given me the chance to think in a whole new way and get out of my comfort zone and really think about how do I express these really important findings that I'm used to writing out with statistics and little graphs. That how do I make it more understandable to people that can really benefit from it?
And where do you want people to get a copy of this book, and where do you want people to connect with you as well?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking that. So I have a website, which is my name. So it's Becca-Levy.com. And so if anyone is interested, they can pre-order the book, or the book's coming out on April 12th. And what's nice about the website that we're developing is, and it's up now, is that there are independent booksellers that are up there. So you can support your local bookseller and to find a copy.
I love that idea. That is a good idea. Thank you for doing that. Yes. That is awesome. I'll make sure everyone knows where to get a copy of this book. I am very excited for it. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of it. 2 quick final questions for you, Dr. Levy, if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course.
What do you love the most about yourself, your age, and your story?
Oh, that's a great question. What do I love most about myself? I guess being curious. So I think that inspires me to find out a lot of things that I really enjoyed and really has made me passionate about conducting research and talking with people and meeting people and finding out all these stories that are out there. And what was the next question?
Your age and your story. You don't have to mention your age. What do you love the most about your age and your story?
Oh, I think I feel like I have experiences that I really enjoy that have brought me to where I am now. And I think I've had a lot of opportunities to learn from many different people, both sort of with my science, but also meeting people over time and watching people develop and watching myself develop. So I think those are all things that I really feel lucky to have going into, reaching the age that I am in now. And I also look forward to seeing where that all goes. So I think that's an exciting part of aging.
I love that. What do you hope for the future of aging?
for the future of aging, I hope that we can get rid of ageism. So we no longer have to come up with some tools to fight it. And I think that is on the horizon. I think that there is some messages that we could get rid of ageism. And so I think that that's what I hope. And I think also to give people lots of opportunities as they get older in the workplace and in healthcare and in all different types of settings, so that we have inclusion and equity for older people, I think are really important. And I look forward to those things happening.
So do I. And you'll be at the forefront of it too, with all this research and your work. So my final question for you, Dr. Levy, is my all-time favorite question. I love asking all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one, but I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all of magic for the sake of argument. But they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
That's a great question. I think I would like it to show the ways that I've tried to make the world a better place. And I also the ways that I've tried to be present for those that I love, in different ways. And I hope that it would show that I've been open to growing over time and exploring different aspects of the world and myself as I got older.
It's a perfect send-off message for people. But Dr. Levy, thank you so much for your time today, your wisdom and your advice, and for joining me on the Storybox podcast.
It was great to talk with you. Thank you so much.